Hello, hello, hello. It's been a while. Just want to make sure that all of my settings here are good. Hi. I wanted to come on and talk because, like many people, I am enthralled with the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. I'm not always interested in what's going on in the pop culture world, um, but this case has caught my interest. It originally started when someone had shared um, the fact that the way it was shared was a little bit misleading, but the fact that the psychologist had diagnosed Amber Heard with BPD. And I thought this was really interesting. So I found an article and I read it. And then I wanted more context than the article gave because the article kind of alluded to the idea that this was just um, like a like a given opinion, like it was fact. So I went and I watched the testimony of Dr. Curry, who was the person who gave that opinion, and I found her testimony to be very compelling, not necessarily because of Amber Heard. And I want to say at the outset of this video that I've now watched a lot of this trial. I do not have an opinion on who's right and who's wrong, so you're not going to find that in this video. Um, this video is more going to focus on the archetypal and mythic themes and why I think people are so interested in what's playing out. So I watched Dr. Curry, all of her testimony, and I found it extremely compelling. But I also knew that she was testifying on behalf of Johnny Depp. So the next thing I found was the uh, psychologist. So I wanted to hear then what the psychologist said, uh, who testified on behalf of Amber Heard. And they were like diametrically opposed opinions. So Dr. Curry had said she has BPD and histrionic personality disorder. And Dr. Hughes, who is Dr. or Amber's doctor, said she has extreme PTSD as a result of an IPV, which means intimate partner violence. Now, at this point, I hadn't seen anybody else's testimony. I hadn't seen Johnny Depp. I hadn't been following the trial. I'd been hearing different things. But it was I guess my point is, it was the psychology that drew me into this case. And as I began to watch, I started to notice um, dynamics in my own life and in my own past partnerships that um, definitely were being mirrored in what I was watching. And the more I watched, the more I realized that both Depp's side and Amber's side are definitely telling an archetypal story or mythic story. And I think that's what has everybody so just kind of entranced. I happen to be watching it live with a lawyer online. She has her own like YouTube channel, and the amount of people liking and subscribing to her page was more than 100,000 in one day. Online with her, she had more than 100,000 people live watching. I mean, that's how interested people are in this case. And so let's start with Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is telling the story of Adam and Eve. So his basic assertion is that he is kind of like dumb, old, innocent Adam putzing along in the Garden of Eden. And in comes this, related to the devil, temptress woman. It's kind of it's a Garden of Eden story in which he takes on the archetype of Adam, and Amber Heard oscillates between both Eve and Lilith. He presents her as the like out of control, hysterical person, the abuser, the one who made him lose something. Like we see in the story of Adam and Eve, Eve tempts Adam, quote unquote, tempts him to take a bite of the apple because the snake came in and said so. And then they are shut out of the garden. And essentially what Johnny is saying is, I lost jobs and lost my credibility and fame inside of um, her lies and scheming and this grand hoax that she's portrayed against me. Let me see, I've taken a couple notes like I do, just I don't want to forget anything. So yes, she also, the other thing that is being told is that the one side is trying to make Johnny out to be a really big drug addict, which I think is probably true. There seems to be like irrefutable evidence that that's the case. But what he's saying and his side is saying is that Amber used in front of him, drank in front of him. She was not isolated the way many abuse victims are. She had like her entire family and friends living with them. A bizarre setup where Johnny owned a number of penthouse apartments in this one building, and she had moved in all of her friends. So she was surrounded by family and friends while all this abuse was taking place, alleged abuse was taking place. And they were all using and drinking while he was supposed to be trying to be sober. And then he was getting ridiculed by her. This is where I think that like sometimes they paint her as the Lilith archetype, the one who was just so naughty and so unruly inside the garden and tried to like hurt Adam. Like they're making it out to be like, part of his drug use was she was partially responsible for it. And if it was his drug use that led to her being abused, why was she using in front of him and allowing other people and like bringing people into their space that were using him, tempting him? Okay. So once they get divorced and she makes this allegation, then he is now expelled from the garden, blacklisted in Hollywood. His name is tarnished, and he has to go back to a life of hard work. That's the story they're trying to tell. I'm not saying any of that's actually true, but we can feel the like mythic theme there and how he is Adam, the sweet man. And this is an archetypal story we've been telling in the dominator paradigm for such a long time, that men are the victims of these hysterical temptress women who are always looking to like pull you off your path, and who are looking to create hoaxes against you, or to try and take you out of your own mind. At one point, they play a video where Johnny says, "I'm not going to lose myself for you." And it felt like such an Adam and Eve moment where he was saying, like, I don't want to listen to you anymore because I'm losing myself when I listen to you. So that's Johnny's side. And then the story they're telling on Amber's side is the story of Medusa. She's painting the picture of the like Medusan story. So Medusa was part of the triple goddess in I think it's pre-Hellenistic times, with her sister Athena and Metis. She lives in Athena's temple, and Poseidon comes in and violently rapes her. And when she tells her sister that I was raped, Athena, instead of punishing Poseidon or holding him responsible, she sends Athena, she turns beautiful Athena into a snake-haired Gorgon, and Athena is forced to go live in a cave at the edge of the wilderness, because every time she looks at a man, it kills her. And so Amber is saying, it was hard for me to get any work in Hollywood because all of the establishment that is set up to protect powerful men came in and protected him. And so I got kicked out of the temple, which the temple is like Hollywood is the temple. And she was one of the priestesses inside that temple. And when she dared to make an accusation against Johnny, that got her exiled. And that his smear campaign against her, I think that she's going to try and prove there is one in court. And so if she's successful at being able to prove that, we can say this is an alleged smear campaign, that the alleged smear campaign was successful and she's having trouble finding work. And so she also is exiled. So it's a really interesting to see how each side is telling a really old tale. The other thing Amber's doing, and I think she's doing quite successfully, is taking on the archetype of the woman who is a victim of patriarchy. And of course, that archetype exists. It's very heavy in our collective conscience of women who are the victims of patriarchy in general. Patriarchy is a system that's set up, and it's set up to oppress and exploit the labor of women. And so she's working that archetype into her story as well. And there's strong patriarchal themes in the story of Medusa. There's also strong themes of trauma and PTSD in the story of Medusa, and this sense of like freeze. And so part of her defense is talking about how the alleged abuse that I'm sorry, I'm trying to use these alleged words because I really don't know what's going on, and I don't want to make a declaration about being on one person's side. Really, it just seemed like a toxic relationship, and I'll leave that to the jury to decide right and wrong. But so she's saying that the alleged abuse was so bad that she suffers like extreme amounts of PTSD and has these bouts of times where the anxiety from the PTSD is so bad that she, can't go out of her house. Or her sister got on the stand and talked about, not sleeping, anxiety, stasis, and freeze is a big part. Like the freeze that trauma causes in our nervous system is a big part of the Medusa story. And so, I mean, I got to wondering yesterday, because I do know it's true. There are people who work in the field of mythology who help businesses tell their mythological story. I mean, so I do wonder, I have been wondering, because the stories are so closely related to these two myths, if they have people working on having the collective unconscious align with one side or the other. And depending on whose side can like activate our unconscious, at least in the court of public opinion, that side could win. And I think choosing Adam and Eve as a template to tell your story is probably the stronger story. And it's part of why I think we're seeing so much support for Johnny Depp, is because we really do have deep unconscious agreement with the archetypes in the garden, unfortunately. And then we may know with our mind that, that's just a myth, and we don't agree anymore that Eve was an evil temptress. We're more evolved than that. But really, that dynamic is still so prevalent in our culture. And there really is heavy demonization of Amber Heard happening right now. And whether it's warranted or not, that's not what I'm commenting on. I'm just saying it is happening. It is well and truly happening. And that is the same thing that happened to Medusa. She gained quite a reputation. People knew specifically where her cave was, and they avoided it for a long time. The other thing I wanted to mention about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is this idea that, like, part of why I think we're seeing what we're seeing with them is also kind of what we've seen in the collective with things like 2020. I think why we're seeing this happen is because they are kind of caught at that last gate before you descend into the underworld. And that they continue to like bring these cases against each other because they refuse the descent and alchemical transformation and transmutation that happens when you submit to the liminal kind of trance states down in the dark. it's as if they're using these court cases and the publicity and the mythical stories to suspend them both right above the underworld, where they would actually have to go and face their own shadows. Neither one of them seems capable of taking responsibility for their actions, and it's sad. um, it's unfortunate. So anyways, I wanted to make this video because I've just been so interested in the case, and I've been so interested in seeing how these themes that I originally picked up on have continued to play out in the courtroom and follow these mythological or mythopoetic kind of like storylines. This archetypal context is very prevalent in this story. And so we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what the jury comes back and says. I wish nothing but health and healing to both parties involved. I mean, it's definitely like, if you've ever it's been very cathartic for me to watch. I mean, if you've ever been involved in a toxic relationship where there's toxic dynamics, you know, I wouldn't say uh, it's a great thing to watch if you were genuinely the victim of abuse, and that you didn't participate in toxic dynamics. Might not be, could be triggering. um, but if you've ever been part of a kind of toxic dynamic, um, it's been very cathartic for me to watch my own possible behavior mirrored back to me, you know, like, and see where, you know, I could have been in more integrity, or how I could have handled something better. It's been interesting to see what trauma bonding looks at, because it's so exaggerated. I mean, it's almost a caricature of the dynamic. Um, there's almost nowhere where this story is going to overlay perfectly with your own, but it does kind of shine a light on some of the more nuanced. Like, I've never been in a relationships that is this extremely volatile. Um, but it has shown a light on how, like, there were places that I think I was committed to being a victim of one of my ex-boyfriends from a long time ago, and that it was more than likely kind of a mutual just toxicity. I was very young, I hadn't done any healing work yet, um, and I can probably at this point let go of the idea that I was really um, only his victim. You know, it's been empowering for me, cathartic and healing to see that. So definitely, it's not necessarily something I think you should tune in with if you've not done any healing work, or you're genuinely, you know, like the victim of domestic violence. I mean, tune in if you want to. I thought I'd say that, like, I'm not promoting it as that. If you have a history of that, I think it might be something you'd want to really resource yourself with first. That's all. All right. Bye to y'all.